I watched the death of my king's dreams, and then the death of my king. I watched half of your kind rebel against the empire it took us almost 3 centuries to build, and I watched you turn it to ash. I've watched even the most loyal of you scheme against your brothers, whine about who was favored over whom, and go to war over your arrogances, heedless of consequences like some moronic pantheon of ancient gods. You and the malformed coven of tainted genetics you call a family have no right to set foot upon this world. You say you lost a father, but you didn't. You lost the scientist that created you. You lost the visionary that had such high hopes for you, but he was never your father. Your fathers love you dearly, Primarch. Even now, they dance through the warp, laughing at what good boys you've all been. You say the Emperor would trust you now with the resurrection of the Imperium. If he trusted you, why did he need 10,000 bodyguards? And why weren't you one of them? Why weren't you called upon to defend the webway? Why did he entrust that most vital task to his true chosen? Why, whenever he related the truth of the galaxy, was it never his sons that he told? Welcome back to the channel, fellow renegades. It's Ave Dominus New back again with more 40k content, and I've got another review for you. I read The Era of Ruin by various authors. But before I get into the review, don't forget to like and subscribe. I've only read 25% of the Horus Heresy, and I skipped all the way to the Siege, and I've got a lot of homework to make up for, and you gotta be there for the journey. So without any further ado, let's prepare to stand in midnight clad. So Era of Ruin is the supposedly final book in the Horus Heresy series. Well, I actually don't think that that's true, because I heard an announcement the other day that there's like 3 more Horus Heresy books coming out. So maybe it's not like the end. It just kind of wraps up the final parts of the story and gives the characters a nice little bit of closure, wraps it up with the tight bow. Also, I probably should warn you, this will be spoilers. I can't, because they're such short stories, I can't think of a way to like wrap them up without possibly telling you what happened in it. So if you have already read Era of Ruin, or if you just don't care about spoilers, we're gonna get into it. If you do, maybe skip to the end of the video. So the first story is Angels of Another Age by John French. And it basically is a story about a squad of various space marines, including a blood angel. And during their final stand, the black rage is actually triggered in the blood angel. And basically it's just kind of like a description of how he feels as that's going on. Now, me personally, I want to give the story a 3 for average, 3 out of 5. It's pretty good. The setup and the writing are spectacular. The characters sound badass, but the only reason I took off points is because it's so hard to tell what's going on when the actual Black Rage hits. It becomes very... John French has this way of writing that's like this existential way of writing where you can't always exactly tell what's going on, like past, present, and future kind of collide at the same time. So like you kind of get like blood vision combined with like flashbacks, but at the same time, that's not exactly what I was expecting. If I wanted to hear a story about a blood angel going into Black Rage for the first time during Sanguinius' death, I would have actually liked that from somebody else's point of view, because you can't really tell what happened. But I still think it's a decent story, so we'll give it a 3. Next up is Fulgerite by Nick Kine. It's a story about a word bearer who touched a piece of Fulgerite and just decided that he absolutely needs to use this to murder Lorgar. So he wanders around Terra, like during and after the siege, and gets caught up into all sorts of bullshit. Now, it is a very good story, but I have a score and I have a biased score. So like my unbiased score is honestly to give it a 5. His journeys and getting to see what Terra looks like after the battle and what like the troops are doing. And then there's like cameos, like he runs into Fabius Bile down there making monsters, and like it's, you know, I love Fabius Bile, so it was crazy to see my boy. I gotta give it a 5 just based off of that. Now my bias score, I give it a 4. And I took off a point because Erebus showed up and stabbed another character that I'd grown attached to. Now don't get me wrong, him being there was pointless in the first place, because Lorgar was, if you know about the Siege of Terra, Lorgar was not there. He already got ran out by Horus during Slaves to Darkness. But like, he wasn't gonna find any Lorgar down there anyway. But the fact that he did all this just for Erebus to slide a anatheme underneath his armor, I'm just sort of like, bro, why does this keep happening? He can't keep getting away with this. So that's my bias score as a 4. You can give it a 4 or a 5. The next story is Fragments, All We Have Left. and it was written by Dan Abnett. Fragments is a really good story. This is another perfect one. I gave it a 5 out of 5. It's about a sister of Silence who is in her last days on the battlefield too, and she basically is giving us this narrative of how there's not much left after the battle. Chaos is kind of taking everything. They don't even have fear left. Fear is exhausted. All they have left is stories, and she keeps coming back to this point, and she's telling a story about kind of how she took down like a World Eaters champion, and how she broke her vow and took off the mask and screamed, and that fucked up everybody on the battlefield. It was so well written. I really enjoyed this story, and I think Dan Abnett cooked. The next story is Ex-Libris by, once again, John French is back again, and this time he secured the 5. When it comes to his version of storytelling, the existentialism that I talked about, I think that works very well with characters like the Thousand Sons and Ahriman. By the way, this is an Ahriman story. Ahriman's in the library ransacking knowledge when everything, chaos collapses and Horus dies, and basically he's trapped in there, and his homie, was it Amon, comes and he tries to warn him that, dude, like, you are like made of the stuff now, like you got to find a way to get out of the room, otherwise you're going to fucking, what's happening to chaos is going to happen to you too. And Ahriman goes through a spirit journey in a way, and a giant dragon comes and talks to him and tells him that he's got his back. It's probably Zinch, but I really liked Ex-Libris. It might be a bias score. It might really deserve a 4. I want to give it a 5 just because it's got Ahriman in it, so we're just going to give it that bias score. Well done. I liked it. Next story is called System Purge by Gav Thorpe. And System Purge Cook 2 is about a Mechanicus, two different tech priests and their acolyte, and their journey to shut down the malevolent code that's at the Lions, is it the Lions Port Gate? Lions Gate Spaceport. And they have to take a White Scar with them who is pretty good at technology themselves, maybe not like Mechanicus level, but it's very cool to see their relationship between kind of like a tech, no, I'm not going to call him a tech priest, maybe like a tech marine White Scar compared to like the acolytes, and it's cool to see them battle code through the new sphere and stuff like that. I just thought it was very well written. I love the Mechanicus, and it's cool to see them fight on a different playing field than like what most of the people in 40K can fight on. Plus you got your White Scar there to give you some perspective and save their asses. The only reason I didn't give it a perfect score is because the ending is kind of jarring. It kind of just happens, and then he just finishes with like, boom, system purged. And like, I don't know, that kind of took me out of the story. It kind of just like shook me out of the story. So I really don't even want to take away a whole point for that. I'll take away like half a point. It was like a 4.5, almost perfect, Gav Thorpe. Well done. Then there's After the Dawn, The Darkness. Now this story was a little bit more of a slow burn. The rest of the stories had some type of combat or some type of vulture porn or whatever. But this one was just about our boy Katsushiro and trying to take care of his new infant son. Not really his son, but basically his son. And having to like deal with that and like what the people are going through. After the Darkness did an amazing job of showing everybody's struggle, the hunger, like the desperation and stuff like that. Like, even though the battle for Terra is over, mankind is still fighting for its survival. And I think that After the Darkness did an amazing job of showcasing that. I really cared for Katsushiro. He was one of my favorite protagonists throughout the Siege of Terra. And to see him and his baby get a good ending in a place where good endings are not really a thing. And I'm not even that big of a fan of happy endings, but at the same time, I think that Katsushiro deserved that, and it was very well written. I give it a 5. Then there's Homebound by Chris Rafe. Now, Homebound hit me so hard. Homebound is the ending for Ilya. I think she was the fleet commander for the White Scars, and it's literally during her final days. And similar to After the Darkness, it basically just kind of shows like men and women in their desperation in the final days and after the Siege of Terra. And Ilya like grew on me a lot, and you get to see the Khan in this story, and he's not doing mentally well and stuff like that, but you kind of get a good idea of like, and also something that was really cool in this story is you actually kind of see a little bit of like them planting the seeds for Gilliman versus Dorn, which I don't think happens, but somebody was warning Ilya like, you know, watch out for Gilliman, because while everyone else is just sort of like twiddling their thumbs and stuff like that, Gilliman's the empire builder, so he's going to step up to the plate, so watch him closely. So like, I guess it was kind of a warning in a way, because you know, you have to understand that people are traumatized by the Space Marines. They're the ones who started this whole thing, plus the Emperor. So they are not in any rush to see them back in any position of power. Also, Ilya doesn't survive the story. The corruption and the sickness and the pollution that was at the battlefield actually got to her, and she wasn't doing well for the whole book. And near the end, after like one more battle, she was like, she couldn't really take much more. And Sojak just kind of found her in her bed, and like he like buried her with her dagger and stuff like that. And he actually wept, and it was so heartbreaking. It was a really sad story, but it was really good though too. It's not like she died a bad death. She died in her bed, you know what I'm saying, at the house her parents raised her in. But it was just crazy. I wasn't expecting you to be emotional over the story. So far, I think that one is probably like the best story out of the book, in my opinion. I think that Homebound is the best story in Era of Ruin, and I highly suggest you check it out, even if you don't read the other ones. And finally, you've got the Carrion, Lord of the Imperium by one of my favorite writers, Aaron Dembski motherfucking Bowden, and he cooked with this one. Now, it's may not be the perfect story. I'm still going to give it a 5. Like, I don't know if I like it as much as Homebound, but it gives us lots of juicy information. Maybe I'll give it a 4.5, because basically what it is the journals of Diocles, the new tribune of the Custodes, and basically it's just sort of like it catalogs their opinions on what's going on with the Siege of Terra or the Horus Heresy all the way up to like modern day. And they talked about how like they thought the Primarchs were a bad idea when they made them. They talked about a Custodes dying in battle for the first time during the Great Crusade and stuff like that. They talked about Magnus, like their reaction to Magnus busting into the Webway Gate project and destroying everything. They had a part where after everything was done, Guilliman was trying to become the peacemaker, and they were ready to kill him because they blamed everything on Guilliman. And Diocles, rightfully so, crashed out on Guilliman, and it was actually one of my favorite parts in the book. I'll go back and try to find the quote and give it to you either at the beginning or the end of the video or something like that, maybe in the beginning. But like, oh my goodness, it was a good book. And then at the end, he kind of like makes his pilgrimage to the Emperor because he and another character talk about dreams and stuff like that. And he goes all the way to the Carrion Lord, and their description of him in the throne and what's going on with him is so good, and it's crazy. And I love how they refer to it as the thing on the throne, because that's what Guilliman calls it in the Dark Imperium. So it's just good. I give it like a 4.5, maybe leaning towards 5. I feel like I gave some of these other things 5s, and maybe this one deserves it too. But Carrion, Lord of the Imperium was a very interesting read and a very good ending to the anthology, and I thought it was fire. So that was the video. Tell me what you thought about the Era of Ruin if you read it. Tell me if you're interested in me reading more anthologies like this, short stories. And tell me if I'm just glazing the book too much. Was it like not as good as I thought? Because if you average everything, I think the book got about a 4.5. It's very good. It's going to be very difficult for an anthology series to get a 5 that way, because you have to like take everything. But at the same time, I think 4.5 is crazy. I did not expect to enjoy the stories as much as I did, and I hope that you enjoy them too. This is Ave Dominus Noob saying Ave Dominus Nox.